Welcome to Digosec Presents. In today's episode, we'll be chatting with someone who spent her entire teaching career of 34 and a half years at this school. She was a history teacher, head of department, dean, vice principal, and retired as principal. Ms. Gayle Khan, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Ms. Khan, you spent 34 and a half years teaching here at Digosec. Part of that time you lived in the East, where I know the traffic could be difficult. What kept you here so long?
Actually, it was difficult, and I spent 18 years living in the East and traveling, doing that long, arduous commute every day. What kept me in Diego Martin Secondary? Actually, in 1979, after just being here for 2 years, it really took its toll, and I applied for a transfer to any school that was nearer. I got a transfer to Summer Secondary, along with 2 other teachers, and I refused it. Why? I considered the children, and they were the most beautiful, disciplined, well-mannered children, and I had grown to love that the student population and members of staff. They were friendly, they were like family, and I didn't want to leave that. So I just thought to myself, I'll put up with it, and that's what I did. In fact, when I first got the job, I didn't want it at all. It was too far. I did not know where Diamondville was, right? And a close friend of mine told me, just tell the taxi driver to drop you by the boulevard, because it was called Diamond Boulevard at the time, or by the police station. And I think I said both. And I finally came here and stayed for 34 and a half years. Yeah.
What made you study history at the university?
What made me study history? At high school, I went to Napoleon Girls High School in San Fernando. I just happened to be good at history. In fact, I have to admit, I did not have the most interesting history teachers. We did a lot of European history, and for young children, it could have been boring, and it was. Nevertheless, I just would always score high marks. I don't think I really loved history until I went to uni. When I went to university, we were still in the era of Black Power ideology. And some of the history courses became more meaningful to me at that time. And it made you connect to your past on a personal level. And also on a national level, you were able to see how nations were affected, how we are the way we are. And that's what I tried to do even when I was teaching here. Some very interesting stories, if I could share with you.
Sure.
When in Form 1, at that level, there are chapters in the book that deals with African history, East Indian history, Chinese, and so on. And whenever I got to those chapters, I would ask the class to tell me a bit about their ethnic background. It was sad yet interesting that it never failed. They would stand and say, children who were visibly African, they would relate to you their ethnic background. And they would be very proud to say they had Spanish blood in them, they had Indian, they had Chinese, they had everything else but African. Until I would ask them, what does your mother look like? And we would try to explain that. And the reason why they did that, and this is the sad part, because they did not know the great civilization that Africa was. So they were always embarrassed. And it happened with East Indians as well. And then I remember another experience that I had with a young boy in Form 2. This could be in the 70s. I referred to him as an African, and he was visibly shaken by that. So the next week came and he was still not himself. And I had to call him and ask him, and he said, but Miss, I'm a Negro, and you called me an African, and that bothered him because of his perception of Africa. So after I went through all of that, he was okay. But, and I think history is important, if not for that alone, to let us connect with the past and know that we have come from greatness. You know?
Did you think you wanted to be a school teacher before going to UE? Or is it when you were at UE, you decided you're learning all these great and wonderful things about our past and you wanted to share it with the young people?
When I was 6 years old, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And that never diminished. Actually, I used to daydream about teaching in my younger sister's preschool, and daydream about what I would wear, a black skirt and a white shirt, and that I would work for $5 and I would give my mother some and so on. So I always wanted to be a teacher, never wanted to be anything else. However, I played a lot of sports. I was involved in netball in my school, lawn tennis, a bit of badminton. So actually I wanted to be a physical education teacher. My mother in her wisdom told me, she said, you really want to play games and you would not want to spend the rest of your life in that hot sun. So I think you better consider doing your degree in history. And I did it, and that's what happened. Yeah.
No, I've heard it said that the history books are not accurate, especially when you look at white people writing West Indian history. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, in the early 60s, 50s and so on, we had some of that, but as more black people are rewriting that history, I think we're getting a more balanced and more accurate picture of it. People like Vaughn T and those, you know, yeah, I would say yes. Because, for example, in some history books, we were told that Africans were cannibals. Caribs and Arawaks were especially the Caribs were cannibals, far from the truth. Right? So yes, I would agree.
How did your students respond to history?
I think my students responded very well, mainly because I did not teach history as a dead subject pertaining to dead people and events of the past, even though it did. I think I tried to make history very much a subject that was alive, that influenced their lives, and tried to make that connection with the past and what we were experiencing today and why we were experiencing what we were experiencing today. So it was a very much a subject that was living and alive, and I think they appreciated that. And I remember a girl in Form 5 having a chat with me, and she said to me, Miss, you know what my grandfather told me about you? I said, no. She said, my grandfather said, that teacher knows how to sell her subject. And I always remember that because I think I used to pass that on to teachers, that they needed to sell their subject, make it relevant and interesting. And then is when children get to like the subject and like the teacher.
Now, Ms. Khan, you ended your career as a school principal, and you served for 7 years as a principal, including the acting position.
7 years in administration.
Right. What was it that prepared you to be an effective principal?
I think that I was disciplined, and I think I learned from working with other very effective principals. I learned a lot from them, and that is what prepared me, I would say. In addition, I have to give credit to the school supervisor at the time, Sheridan Wilkinson, who actually trained us, Mrs. Edith and myself, and that training was invaluable. I have to admit that.
You were also head of department, a dean. How did that influence you later on when you were principal?
Well, I think being a dean also helped because I was always in touch with the problems of the children, how to solve those problems, how to help them to transform. That helped because when you sit in that principal's chair, you have a lot of that to do. And it also taught me how to counsel children, which was part of that disciplinary process, but not all of it. So that, I would say that helped.
What was it that you hoped to accomplish by being principal of Degosec?
My main objective was to take Diego Martin Secondary, which had always been a very good school, Tanatan level, to be called the best government secondary school in Port of Spain and environs. That was my objective. My time was short, but I think I made strides to that end. I wanted the results to climb. I think we were quite capable of, I think about 85% pass rate at O levels. It took it just to 58, time ran out. But I think that Diego Martin Secondary can achieve that status. And that was my aim. Also to teach the children generally that even though we were striving for them to do well in the exams, academically, that attitude counts very often for more than genius. So I wanted to instill that in them also, that even though, yes, we're pushing for you to get these 5 or more levels and so on, that I wanted them to cultivate excellent attitudes for further on.
Ms. Khan, I think anybody who went through Degosec would remember you as one of those teachers students were generally afraid of. What it is about you think that made students so afraid?
No. Maybe because they knew that I was a no-nonsense person. Because at the end of the day, we couldn't beat them. I couldn't do any of those things. But I think you'll have to ask the students that, because I have no idea. You know, some people refer to it as respect, others say it was fear. Maybe the students would be better able to answer, but I think they knew that I would not let a lot slip by, and maybe they were always on the P's and Q's with me. So probably it's that.
So how many years has it been since you've retired?
3.
3 years. And what is it you're doing now, Ms. Khan?
Even before I retired, I had a friend of long standing, and he owns 6 garment stores, and he had always asked me to come and be his human resource manager and to administrate the stores, and that's what I do right now. It's 3 or 4 days a week that I visit the stores, but I do a lot of it from at home, so that keeps me busy. And it's administration all over again.
Right, so
and it's interesting to know that some of the same issues that I encountered here at school with staff and students, it's the same thing in the store. So human beings are human beings wherever you meet them.
What, if you have more than one, you can share more than one, but is there any memory from your time here in Degosec that stands out in your mind?
But there are so many. Not one in particular that stands out in my mind, but I can tell you what I miss the most. I miss dealing with the children. and being part of their developmental years and seeing them transform and mature, because they really do, right? And I also miss their humor, because in the midst of all the discipline, I think you would understand, there's so much humor that when they left the room, we would have a good laugh. And camaraderie of the members of staff, right?
From over 30 years of teaching, are there students who stand out in your memory, who make this country proud, who make you proud?
Oh yes, quite a few. To mention a few, Raymond Edwards, Nigel Floyd, who's now an attorney, Danny White, who I think it's Lieutenant Major Danny White, I think that's the correct title, Lieutenant Major Archelaus Philip, Annalise Innes, she's also an attorney, and there are many more that I don't recall at this point.
Thank you for being with us today, Ms. Khan.
You're more than welcome.